This really happened to me. And even now it feels unreal to say out loud, at 60 years old, I thought I had seen everything. Until my own son tried to erase me and take my place. I first realized something was horribly wrong. The morning I received a letter from my bank in San Diego. It was addressed to me, but inside it spoke of a new credit account. Opened under my name complete with a signature. I recognized all too well. My sons, the betrayals, stung like ice through my veins because that handwriting used to make me proud. Now it felt like a weapon pointed at my very existence. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from and what time it is. Right now, it's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. The letter sat on my kitchen counter, the morning sun cutting through the blinds in my small condo overlooking Mission Valley. I read the words again and again, my coffee going cold in my hands. The account was real, the bank confirmed when I called. It had been opened with my social security number, my driver's license copy, even a forged utility bill that supposedly proved my residence, and there was no mistaking it, my son. Michael had done this. Michael was 32 tall, with the kind of easy smile that could charm a waitress into giving him a free dessert or talk his way out of a speeding ticket. But behind that smile was something darker, something I had tried to ignore for years. His need to take shortcuts, his willingness to lie, and his strange resentment of me. I hung up the phone with the bank, my hand trembling. My son wasn't just in debt or struggling. He was using me as his escape hatch. The man who had held him as a baby, who had worked double shifts at the docks to pay for his Little League uniforms, who had driven him across town to every job interview he half-heartedly attended. Now he was forging my name, stealing my credit and slipping into my identity, like it was a jacket he could just borrow whenever he wanted. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, maybe a clerical error. Maybe someone else with the same name. But deep down, I knew this was Michael. That night, I sat alone in my recliner, staring at the muted television screen. The sounds of the city filtered in through the window. The occasional honk, a motorcycle revving somewhere in the distance. My thoughts kept circling back to my sons. Face, hadn't I raised him better? Hadn't I given him everything I could? The betrayal cut deeper because it wasn't a stranger. It was my own flesh and blood, the person I had once believed would look out for me. In my old age, I needed answers. The next morning, I drove down to Michael's apartment in Hillcrest. His building was one of those boxy stucco complexes with faded paint and a buzzer that never worked. I let myself in, climbing the stairs 2 at a time. Despite the ache in my knees, Michael opened the door, shirtless. Bleary eyed, his hair sticking up like a haystack. The place smelled like stale pizza and weed. "Dad," he said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" I held up the letter. "You want to explain this?" His eyes flickered just for a second. That was all I needed. Whoa, slow down," he said. Reaching for the paper, I pulled it back. "You opened a credit account in my name. You forged my signature." "Michael, what the hell is wrong with you?" He laughed nervously. "Dad, it's not what you think. I just needed a little help." "Help?" My voice rose. "You stole from me. That's not help, that's fraud. Do you know what could happen to me? At my age, my credit is all I have." He rolled his eyes like I was being dramatic. "You're overreacting. I'll pay it off." "Okay, I just needed a jump start." The arrogance in his tone made my blood boil. He didn't even look guilty, just annoyed that I had caught him. "You'll pay it off," I repeated. "With what money, Michael? You can't even pay your rent on time." His jaw tightened. "Why do you always have to bring that up? You think you're so perfect." I felt my chest tighten with anger and grief. This wasn't just a mistake. This was who he had become. "Listen to me carefully," I said, my voice low now. "If you don't fix this, if you don't close that account and stop using my name, I will go to the police." "Do you understand?" Michael smirked, leaning against the doorframe like he owned the place. "You wouldn't do that. You're my dad." And that was when I realized the truth. He thought I was weak. He thought blood was a shield that would protect him from consequences. But he was wrong. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. More letters arrived, more accounts. I never opened debts piling under my name. A collection agency even called me demanding payment for a payday loan I had never taken. I started keeping a folder, a thick, ugly folder, with every notice, every forged document, every piece of evidence that tied back to Michael. I didn't want to do it. God knows I didn't. But I had to start thinking of him not as my son, but as a threat. Still, a part of me hoped he would come to his senses. I invited him to lunch at a diner on El Cajuna Boulevard, hoping to reach him one last time. He showed up late, wearing a leather jacket he couldn't afford, sliding into the booth with that same smug grin. "What's up, old man?" he said, grabbing a fry from my plate before I could even answer. I stared at him across the table. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to me?" He shrugged. "You'll survive. You always do." That was the moment I knew there was no saving him. Michael didn't see me as his father anymore. He saw me as a resource, a bank account, a name to exploit. And if I didn't stop him, he would keep taking until there was nothing left of me. The war had begun. But what I didn't know then was just how far he was willing to go and how much darker this betrayal would get. Before I finally turned the tables on him, because the next piece of mail that landed on my doorstep wasn't about credit cards, it was a notice from the county clerk's office. Someone had filed paperwork to transfer the deed of my condo out of my name. The notice from the county clerk's office looked innocent. Cream paper, neat black type, but my stomach dropped as soon as I read the first line. It was a courtesy alert generated whenever a property document recorded under a name or parcel number matched yours. My name, my condo's parcel number. The form letter didn't say much, just that a grant deed had been presented for recording, transferring title from me to a limited liability company I'd never heard of. The letter said, if this sounded unfamiliar, I should contact the assessor, recorder, county clerk at their Kearney Mesa office immediately. My hands shook so hard I had to sit down before I called the number on the page. The woman who answered had the calm voice of someone who handled panicked people every day. She asked for the instrument number from the letter, put me on hold, and returned with a quick inhale that did nothing good to my heart. Rate. Yes, sir. It shows a grant deed transferring interest from you to Sunset Crest Holdings, LLC. It was notarized in National City 2 days ago. She paused. If this was not you, you must file a fraud report. You may also want to place a fraud alert and contact the district attorney's real estate fraud unit. Can I get a copy of the deed? I asked. You can come in and request a certified copy. It'll be there in an hour. Traffic on the 163 crawled sunlight, flashing off SUV windshields like little knives. I gripped the steering wheel and tried to remember my own breath. Sunset Crest Holdings, an LLC. Someone had planned this. Not some spur of firmament credit card splurge, but a deliberate attempt to take my home, the one thing they knew I could not lose. Inside the Kearney Mesa office, the air conditioning blasted so cold my eyes watered. A clerk printed the document, and slid it across the counter with the clinical care of a surgeon handling evidence. The paper was surprisingly heavy. At the top, my name, then the legal description of my condo, and then under grantor the signature line, where my name appeared in block letters, followed by a signature that was supposed to be mine. It looked like me, but wrong, like hearing your own voice recorded and realizing something has been stripped out. The flourish at the end of my last name was too long. The J on my first name was hooked a flourish. I'd lost decades ago when arthritis crept into my fingers. A notary acknowledgement seal stamped the bottom right corner. An official circle bearing the name Cynthia R. Moyer Notary Public, and a commission number, the date, 2 days ago, National City. I asked the clerk. She nodded. That's where the notary's office is based. On the street outside, the hot air hit me like a wave. I sat in my car with the door open, my feet planted on the asphalt, and thought about all the times I had warned Michael about shortcuts, about integrity, about how every lie cost more in the end. And now my son had found himself a notary and an LLC. Or rather, someone had found them for him. A notary named Cynthia, a limited liability company named Sunset Crest Holdings. I typed the names into my phone. The LLC was generic enough to be Smoke. The first result for the notary was a Yelp page for a mobile notary service out of a UPS store on Highland Avenue in National City. A second listing showed the same notary advertising late-night services. There was a photo of a woman with a warm smile standing in front of the brown and gold UPS logo. I drove National City's main drag was a tangle of commerce body shops, taco spots, laundromats. The UPS store sat in a sun-baked strip mall next to a nail salon called Polished Dreams, and a family-run taqueria where the parking lot always smelled like carnitas inside the UPS store. The smell shifted to cardboard and toner. The notary desk was a little counter just to the side. "I'm looking for Cynthia," I said to the young man behind the register. He shook his head. "She's not in today. Is there a way to contact her? It's urgent real estate." His eyes brightened like he thought I wanted to pay for a notarization. "She does mobile. There's a business card." He tapped a holder filled with glossy cards. I took one and stepped outside to call. The moment Cynthia answered, I knew two things. She was tired, and she was professional. When I explained that my name appeared on a grant deed, she'd notarized the fatigue sharpened to a wary precision. "I can't discuss specific clients," she said. "But if you believe fraud occurred, you should call the police and the county recorder. They'll contact me if needed. I already did. But tell me this, did a man named Michael come in?" Tall, easy smile. "My son." Silence hummed on the line. "I'm sorry, I can't." "Did they present an ID?" I pushed before she could hang up. "The signature doesn't match mine. If you notarize anything in my name, it wasn't me. I'm asking as a father." Her exhale trembled. Two people came in with what looked like a valid driver's license and a utility bill. "The person signing had your name. There was a woman too. Mid-30s, blonde highlights, called herself Addie. She did most of the talking." Addie. The name landed like a coin clattering in a jar. Michael had mentioned an Addison. Once a bartender he met in North Park when he'd been networking with a guy about crypto. She had a way, he said, of making everything sound simple. "Did you take a thumbprint?" I asked. "Did you keep a notary journal?" "I always do," she said quickly, relieved to be on procedure. "Thumbprint journal? If the investigator asks, we'll turn over copies." I thanked her and hung up, then sat in the driver's seat, staring through the windshield at the shimmering heat. Addison Sunset Crest Holdings. A fake utility bill. A forged deed. My son didn't have the brains to stitch that together alone. He had charm, sure, but charm doesn't file corporate paperwork and design a fraud around a notary seal. I drove back to Mission Valley and for the first time, truly, locked my door. I put the chain on and pressed the deadbolt twice. Then I pulled out the ugly folder and laid everything I had collected on the coffee table. Credit accounts, collection, notices. The forged deed, I took photos of each document and emailed them to myself in a new folder labeled Michael Fraud 2025. I added the notary's card. I added a screenshot of the LLC listing. Then I called the San Diego Police Department non-emergency line and filed a report. The operator gave me a case number and told me an investigator would follow up. I called the district attorney's office and left a message with the real estate fraud hotline, my voice cracking at the end when I said my son's name. After that, the Federal Trade Commission to fill out an identity theft report on Identity Theft Gov, and then freezes at Equifax Experian TransUnion. I called my banks. I changed every password like I was sweeping a house full of mines. It was almost midnight by the time I finished. The city had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that makes the hum of your refrigerator sound like a generator. I stood by the window and looked down at the courtyard where the pool glowed. That artificial blue that always made me feel lonely. When my phone buzzed, I jumped. A text from Michael, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Calm down. I'll handle it. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then I typed back. You will never step foot in my home again. If you come near my door, I will call the police. His reply came fast. You're not going to own that condo much longer anyway. I turned off my phone and set it face down on the counter, but the words still burned behind my eyes. At 60, I understood something I wished I'd learned sooner. You could love someone and still need protection from them. The two truths sat in me like stones. The investigator from the DA's office called 2 days later. Her name was Veronica Ruiz, and her voice held all the sunshine my week lacked. We see these deed fraud cases more and more, she said. Usually it's strangers. Family that makes it harder, but it doesn't make it legal. She asked for everything I scanned and sent it within the hour, then drove down to the Hall of Justice on Broadway to meet her in person, because I needed to look someone in the eye and know they believed me. The windows in her office framed the Coronado Bridge, pale against the afternoon haze. You did a lot. Right, Mr. Jensen, she said, flipping through the pages. Fraud alert, police report contacting us early. The earlier we act, the better, the chance of stopping transfer. The recording date is noted, and with the notary information we can move. But she tapped the LLC page with her pen. LLCs are used to hide the beneficiary. We'll need to pierce that if possible. My son's involved, I said. The words felt like gravel. He and a woman named Addison. Do you have phone numbers, social handles? I gave her what I had. She scribbled notes. Well, contact the notary and subpoena the journal. Meanwhile, I recommend you file a civil action to quiet title. It's a way to ask a judge to declare that the deed is void. It's not fast, but it's a necessary layer. I can connect you with legal aid if cost is an issue. I thanked her as I turned to go. She added, I'm sorry it's your son, but you deserve to live in your home without fear. Outside, I sat on a bench, feeling the heat on my shoulders. People moved past me with iced coffees and buzzing phones, their lives unbroken. I closed my eyes and saw Michael at 7 years old, cheek sticky with orange popsicles, standing on the beach at La Jolla, shores pointing at pelicans like they were fighter jets. How did we get from there to here? That night I dreamed of locks clicking into place. When I woke, the chain on my door was intact, but my mailbox was wide open, with the little metal tongue bent like someone had pried it with a screwdriver. Half the mail was gone. I stood there with the metal cool against my fingers. The morning sun turning the parking lot into a field of knives again. And I knew they would keep coming. If they couldn't steal on paper, they'd do it in person. They'd watch the windows. They'd try to get in. I bought a new lock for the mailbox that afternoon and scheduled the condo association's locksmith to rekey my front door. I ordered a camera doorbell and a cheap motion sensor light for the balcony. And then I took a step I didn't want to take. I called my ex-wife Dana, who had moved to Tucson years ago, and who had long ago accepted that Michael's talent for shortcuts predated our divorce, and had nothing to do with who had primary custody. Which, yeah, she answered on the third ring. Hey, she said softly. How bad? I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she made a single sound, like a door quietly closing. Do what you have to do, she said. Hare's our son, but he's also 32. Hare's making choices. You can't let him take your home. Would you testify if it came to that? My voice wavered. About the patterns, she was quiet a long time. I will, she said finally. He needs to hit a wall that doesn't move. The following week was a blur of adult errands, things you hope you never need to know how to do. I found a solo attorney in North Park who specialized in property disputes and elder financial abuse. Her name was Rachel Kim, a compact woman who listened like a metronome and bled compassion without wasting it. She filed a complaint to Quiet Title in San Diego Superior Court at 1100 Union Street, listed Sunset Crest Holdings LLC as defendant, and named Doe defendants for the conspirators until discovery revealed more. Meanwhile, Veronica from the DA's office called with news. We obtained the notary journal. Thumbprint doesn't match yours. The ID scanned as valid in the moment, but appears to have been altered, a high-quality fake. The notary did her job by the book. She's shaken. We've also connected Sunset Crest Holdings to a registered agent in Nevada. That forwards to a UPS box here in San Diego, off Morena Boulevard. We're working to unmask the beneficiary. Can you arrest someone? I asked. Not yet, we're building the case, but the civil suit will put them on notice, and we'll file a R-list pendens, so no sale can proceed without court review. I slept better that night for the first time in weeks. I even made myself a proper breakfast eggs toast coffee, hot enough to sting my lip, before heading to the grocery store on Friars Road. When I came back, a white envelope lay on my front mat, tucked neatly under the door like a cat's gift. No stamp, no address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A photocopy of the grant deed with my signature circled in red pen and a handwritten note across the top. Stop making this hard. Dad signed the quitclaim, and well, make sure you're taken care of. No signature, but the loop on the deed gave him away. I sank onto the couch, the groceries sweating on the counter, taken care of. That language, like I was a problem, to be managed rather than a father, to be respected, made something in me change. There's a line you don't know. You've crossed until you look back and see the person. You are standing on one side, and the person you've become standing on the other. The man on my side of the line wasn't going to beg for mercy anymore. My doorbell rang. I locked the chain before I pulled the door open to a 2-inch crack. A man I'd never seen stood there wearing a delivery polo and holding a clipboard. "Package for Mr. Jensen," he said. All professional smile. I didn't order anything. "It's a restricted delivery. Need your signature right here." He lifted the clipboard close to my face, a sleek stylus clipped to the top. My name was typed under a signature line. I looked at the logo on his polo. It wasn't FedEx or UPS or any courier I recognized, just a clean invented emblem. His shoes were dusty. The smell of his cologne was too sweet. "I'll pick it up at the depot," I said, starting to close the door. His smile didn't move, but his eyes hardened. "Company policy says we can't leave without a signature." I pushed the door shut. The chain took the brunt of his palm when he suddenly shoved. The metal sang and held. My heart thudded as I backed away, dialing 911 even as he knocked again, this time harder. "Wrong address," I shouted through the wood. "Leave now, police are on the way." The knocking stopped. When I peered through the peephole, the man was gone. I kept the phone in my hand for an hour after the cops left, even though they found nothing. The hallway empty, the stairs quiet, the parking lot ordinary. The officer, a young guy with kindness on his face, took my statement and told me to call again if anything happened. When he left, I locked the door twice and then I called Veronica. That was a test. She said they wanted your signature. If they can capture it clean, they could paste it on other documents. "Good that you refused," I laughed. Then a choked, ugly little sound. "Good. One thing I did right." "You're doing a lot, right?" she said. "And we're closing in. We served the registered agent and a lawyer reached out representing Sunset Crest. They asked for a discussion. That's usually a sign they're feeling heat. Well, invite them to a meeting at our office. You don't have to be there. I want to be there." She hesitated. "That's not typical. It's personal." "I'll sit in the hall." "I don't care. I need to see whoever thinks they can steal the ground under my feet." She didn't promise, but 2 days later she sent an email with a date and time. I printed it and taped it to my fridge, like people tape up prayer cards. The morning of the meeting, the sky over downtown was low and white, the kind of June gloom San Diego wears like a cardigan until noon. I arrived 10 minutes early and drove slowly around the block until I saw them a silver Audi pulling into a metered spot out front. A woman stepped out. First, blonde highlight sunglasses, a white blazer that screamed money, without saying where the money came from. Addison behind her. Another door opened and my son unfolded into the air like a bad idea, becoming a person. He looked good. That was the first knife, clean tan, a collared shirt I had never seen him pay for. He glanced up and down Broadway like he was checking for paparazzi, not consequences. Then followed Addison through the security doors. I parked and sat motionless. My hands at 10 and 2 on a car that wasn't moving. Seeing him there strolling into a building that housed the people trying to stop him pulled something taut in me right to the edge of snapping. You raise a boy to tie his shoes and say thank you. And then one day, you wonder if teaching him to tie knots taught him how to bind your hands. 2, I went inside and told the guard I was here to meet Investigator Ruiz. He called upstairs and then waved me through. The elevator felt like a box being lowered into water. On the 3rd floor, Veronica met me with her cardigan draped over her arm, like she'd anticipated the air conditioning. "You can sit in the conference room next door," she said. "Well, keep the door cracked. If it feels like too much, you walk away." "No shame. Thank you," I said, and meant it. I sat near the corner of the white conference table. Through the wedge of open door, I could see the edge of the other room. I heard chairs scrape a murmured greeting. The clink of a glass of water on wood. I breathed in and out and tried not to listen. Then I heard his voice, my son's voice, and every nerve in me lined up like soldiers. "Look," Michael said the word, stretching into a lazy drawl he used when he wanted to sell something. "This whole thing is a misunderstanding. My dad's been confused lately. He asked us to help with the deed, to make sure things were arranged." A deeper voice cut. "In an attorney," I guessed. "We have an executed agreement that papers rustled shows his intent." Veronica's voice cool as a blade. "We have the original deed and a notary journal showing a thumbprint that is not Mr. Jensen's. We have a police report. We have a pattern of identity theft. And we have an investigator ready to pull security footage from the UPS store where your mobile notary advertises. If this is a misunderstanding, it is a remarkably coordinated one." Addison spoke, then her voice sugar over gravel. "We just want what's fair," he said. "We're to be taken care of." I stood. Mr. Jensen, Veronica's head, appeared in the doorway, her eyes warning and kind at once. Okay, I lied. I wasn't." I stepped into the room. Michael turned for a heartbeat. Surprise cracked his face open. Then he recovered into the smile he'd used on teachers and landlords his entire life. Daddy said, like we were at a barbecue, "You made it?" I looked at him. Here?" Addison's eyes flicked over me like I was an object she might buy if the price dropped. The attorney for Sunset Crest, a sharp man in a navy suit with a haircut that said, "Congress someday," gathered his expressions like cards. "Mr. Jensen," he began, "our clients are strangers." I said evenly to my signature, my consent and any continued right to speak for me. I set my folder on the table. The ugly folder had grown thicker. "You lay a finger on my home again, and the only address you'll be discussing is a P.O. box in whatever prison keeps people who steal their fathers. Name Addison's." Smile flattened. Michael's jaw twitched. The attorney cleared his throat. "There is an option that reduces everyone's exposure," he said carefully. "If your client were to agree to a quiet settlement." "I won't," I said. Veronica let the silence spread like a spill. The attorney nodded once a little tighter. "Then we proceed." We broke chairs, scraped papers, slipped into briefcases. Veronica touched my sleeve lightly, a silent "you did well." I walked out on legs that felt like they were borrowed. In the hallway, a vending machine hummed as the elevator doors opened. I heard my name. I turned to see Michael jogging toward me, his face holding that boyish expression he used to use when he'd broken my sunglasses and wanted me to tell him it was okay. "Dad," he said, breathless, "wait, let's talk." Not in front of them. I stepped into the elevator and held the door with my palm. He climbed in. The door slid shut. The car dropped. He leaned close, voice low. "You're making enemies. You don't understand? These people aren't playing around. Sign the paper they give you, and I promise I'll make sure you keep the place through the holidays." I stared at him until my reflection in his eyes became something I didn't recognize. "Through the holidays," I repeated. "My home." He shrugged like I was being quaint about gravity. "Come on, it's business. Nobody gets hurt if nobody makes a scene." The elevator shuddered as it neared the ground floor. In the mirror, I saw a man behind me. I'd never met the version of myself that had learned to stop confusing kindness with surrender. When the doors opened, I stepped out into the marble-lit lobby and turned to him. "I'm done keeping your secrets," I said. "Next time you call it will be recorded. Next time you show up at my door, there will be officers behind it. And the next time you try to sign my name," he smiled, that same easy curve that had gotten him out of so many consequences, "you won't even know." "Maybe," I said, "but you will." I walked into the light, the street air warm and sour with bus exhaust. The Audi chirped as Addison unlocked it. They pulled into traffic, a silver fish slipping into a current. I was halfway across Broadway when my phone buzzed in my pocket. A new email. Subject line, urgent bank verification needed. It was from my credit union, just like the others. Same logo, same signature. Except the sender's address was off by one letter, and the link in the message preview flickered when I pressed and held, showing a URL that wasn't my bank at all. I didn't click. I lifted my head and scanned the street. Across the way, leaning against a parking meter with a paper coffee cup in hand, was a man I'd never seen, wearing a cap pulled low and sunglasses too big for the clouded day. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking past me toward my parked car, where a small black rectangle, no larger than a deck of cards, sat tucked behind the rear license plate, its edge barely visible if you knew to look, and the realization hit me. Wherever I drove next, they'd know exactly where to follow. The moment I spotted that black rectangle behind my license plate, a cold jolt shot through me. I didn't need to be a tech genius to recognize what it was. A GPS tracker. They weren't just stealing on paper anymore. They were hunting me in real time. I froze in the middle of Broadway traffic, flowing around me in bursts of horns and the rumble of MTS buses. My first instinct was to rip it off, then and there, but then another instinct, stronger and sharper, told me to leave it. If they thought I didn't know, maybe I could use it. Maybe I could finally flip the game. I walked calmly to my car, every step rehearsed like a stage actor, hiding panic sliding into the driver's seat. I kept my face, neutral eyes forward. The man with the coffee cup didn't move. He just watched sipping. Slowly I drove off, not toward home, but toward Balboa Park, weaving through side streets, until I hit the long stretches of tree-lined roads where the jacarandas bloomed purple. This time of year, I parked by the Spreckles Organ Pavilion, a place filled with tourists and dog walkers, and only then did I kneel behind my car to get a closer look at the device. It was magnetic, a sleek black case with no markings. I pried it off, slipped it into a brown paper lunch bag I found crumpled on the floor of my back seat, and set it under a bench near the fountain, where pigeons gathered. 10 minutes later, a silver Audi rolled slowly past on Pan American Road, East Addison's car. They thought they were following me. They thought I was going to lead them to my weak spot. But all they were following was a bag under a bench, surrounded by pigeons. When I finally got home, I locked my door, pulled the curtains, and started planning. For weeks I had been reacting, defending patching leaks, waiting for the next hit. But now, seeing that tracker, hearing Michael's smug voice in that elevator, something hardened inside me. I wasn't going to just survive this. I was going to end it. I opened my ugly folder again, but this time I spread everything out on the floor, like a general surveying maps, credit card fraud, deed forgery, fake notary entries, civil quiet title case, Addison's name, Sunset Crest Holdings. Each piece was a weapon if I knew how to use it. The first weapon information, I called Veronica and told her about the tracker. She was silent for a long moment. "That's intimidation," she said. "It edges into stalking." "Well, file an incident report. If you find the device, bring it in. I already ditched it." I said, "But can you trace it possibly? If there's a serial number, or if we can subpoena the vendor. Most of these are bought online, cheap cash. But the stalking angle strengthens our case, the second weapon. Addison, she was the strategist. Michael had charm, but no patience. Addison had the cold eyes of someone who saw people as chips on a table. If I could peel her away, expose her past, maybe I could break the spine of this scheme. I went online searching her name against every bar, every club, every business listing Michael had ever mentioned. It took hours, but I found her, Addison Burke, arrested in Phoenix in 2019 for check kiting. Charges dismissed after insufficient evidence, but the arrest record still lingered in the county database. Another mention popped up in a civil case in unpaid debt tied to a short-lived LLC dissolved in Arizona after only 6 months. A pattern, a playbook. She had done this before I printed everything, slid it into the folder, and drove straight to Rachel Kim's office. She flipped through the pages with a slow smile that made me believe in the word leverage. "This is useful," she said. "We can use prior bad acts to show a pattern of fraud. It makes it harder for them to claim misunderstanding. Judges hate patterns. Will it stop them?" I asked. "It'll corner them, and once cornered people like her make mistakes." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling fan creaking overhead. Every noise outside felt like a threat. Every headlight sweeping past my window felt like surveillance. But then my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Michael. It was a block number. A voicemail left without a ring. When I played it back, Addison's voice poured through calm and unhurried. "You're stubborn, Mr. Jensen. Admirable, really. But we both know the court system is slow. Lawyers are expensive. Stress is poison at your age. Sign the quitclaim. Take the cash and disappear to Tucson with your ex-wife. Or we keep digging until there's nothing left of you to protect. Think carefully. You have until Friday." I replayed it 3 times, every syllable hammering against my ribs. The audacity, the cruelty. The way she had slipped your age in there like a dagger twisting Friday. That gave me 3 days. 3 days to turn everything. I stared at the ugly folder, at the pile of evidence that felt like a shield too thin to stop a bullet. Then I thought of the tracker, the fake courier, the mailbox pried open. They weren't just committing fraud, they were escalating into harassment, intimidation, maybe worse, and suddenly a plan formed. If they wanted to follow me, I would let them. If they wanted a signature, I would give them one, but it would be on my terms, not theirs. The next morning, I called Veronica. "Can you wire me?" I asked. "You mean a recording device?" "Yes, a sting. They want me to sign a quitclaim. I'll make them bring it to me, catch them red-handed." There was a long pause. "That's risky, but if you're serious, we can coordinate. We'll need a safe location, controlled." "You can't do this alone. I'm not afraid anymore," I said. "They are." She didn't argue. By noon, I was sitting in her office as a tech. Slid a tiny recorder into the lining of my shirt pocket, explaining how the battery worked. How to angle my torso for the best audio. Rachel was there too, arms crossed, watching me like a hawk. "You understand?" she said. "If this goes wrong, it won't?" I said. My voice was steady. "They think I'm weak. That's their mistake." Veronica made the call herself, using a burner phone to dial Michael's number. She put it on speaker. "Mr. Jensen is ready to talk," she said smoothly. "Hell sign, but only in person. Tomorrow noon, Balboa Park by the fountain at the Organ Pavilion." One document, one exchange. There was a beat of silence. Then Michael's voice, eager. "Done well, be there." When the line went dead, Veronica looked at me. "You realize what you just did?" I nodded. "Yes, I just set the trap." The night before the meeting, I barely slept. My condo felt like a stage set, every shadow a curtain, concealing danger. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the recorder in my pocket, rehearsing lines like an actor before opening. Night, by dawn, I was dressed in my best shirt, the one I wore to job interviews years ago, when my hair was still brown. My hands trembled, but not from fear anymore, from anticipation. At 11:55, I was already sitting by the fountain at Balboa Park. Families milled around children tossing pennies into the water. The organ pavilion loomed behind me, white and ornate, its empty stage. A hollow mouth waiting to sing. At 12:07, the silver Audi rolled up. Addison stepped out first, crisp and composed, a leather folder tucked under her arm. Michael followed, sunglasses on, grinning like we were about to have lunch instead of a showdown. They approached, and I stood, heart pounding. Dad, Michael said smoothly, "You're making the right call." Addison handed me the folder. "Sign here. Well, wire you 50,000 by Friday. Enough for a comfortable start somewhere else." I took the folder. Inside, a neatly printed quitclaim deed, my name typed under grantor. A signature line waiting. A notary block left blank, ready for Cynthia. Or someone else they had lined up. I held the pen. I looked at Michael. I looked at Addison. And then I smiled, because I knew, in that exact moment, that the recorder in my pocket was capturing every word. What they didn't know was that Veronica and 2 detectives were watching from a bench 20 yards away, eyes hidden behind sunglasses. But just as I lifted the pen, Addison leaned in close and whispered words that made my blood run cold. "You sign this, or we show the photos." The word photos hit me like a sucker punch. My hand froze above the paper pen, hovering recorder warm against my chest. I turned my head slowly toward Addison, her lips still close to my ear, the faint scent of her perfume sharp as bleach. "What photos?" I whispered back. She leaned back, that cold smile stretching. "You'll see," she said lightly, as if we were discussing vacation snapshots. Michael chuckled, shaking his head. "Dad just signed, don't make this worse," but I couldn't not without knowing. My throat tightened as every nightmare scenario stampeded through my mind. Doctored images, falsified documents, maybe even something pulled from the foggy margins of my past. At 60, I'd lived long enough to know everyone has skeletons. But what could they possibly hold over me that would make me hand over my home? "Show me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Addison slipped a phone from her blazer pocket, tapped the screen, and turned it toward me. My stomach lurched. There I was, grainy photos of me. Walkings into the bank, standing at the county clerk's office, even buying groceries at Ralph's normal activities. But the captions they added beneath each image made them sinister. Fraudulent actor. Elder. Unstable. Possible dementia. Unfit to manage affairs. Michael snorted. "We've been documenting your episodes. If this goes to court, well, show the judge. You know how they look at guys your age. Confused, forgetful, easy prey. They'll believe you don't know what you're signing half the time." My cheeks burned. "You're setting me up as incompetent." Addison nodded sweetly. Conservatorship, very popular in California. You'd be surprised how quickly a judge signs off. Then legally, you won't even own your socks. For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. They weren't just trying to steal my condo. They were trying to erase me, turn me into a ward, a ghost in my own life. But the recorder in my pocket hummed with every word, every threat, every smirk. I forced my hand to move, drawing the pen closer to the page. "All right," I said, my voice heavy. "Ill sign," Michael grinned like a child winning a game. Addison relaxed, sliding the phone back into her blazer. They leaned in, eyes greedy, waiting for the kill. But instead of signing, I put the pen down flat on the table and said loud enough for the families nearby to hear, "You're both under investigation. Everything you just said is recorded. You're done." For a moment, their faces froze. Michael's grin collapsing into shock. Addison's eyes narrowing like a shutter snapping. Then Veronica and the two detectives stood from their bench badges flashing. San Diego County District Attorney's Office, Veronica said firmly, striding toward us, step away from him. The crowd around the fountain turned, curious. Parents pulling kids back. Whispers buzzing like bees. Michael's mouth opened and closed, fish-like, while Addison's jaw clenched, her hand twitching toward her blazer pocket. Don't even think about it, one detective warned, hand hovering near his holster. Addison raised her hands slowly. This is harassment, she hissed. You can't. But Veronica cut her off. We can and we will. You're both coming in. Hours later, I sat in Veronica's office, exhausted but alive, sipping bad coffee that tasted like victory. The recorder had captured everything. The threats, the blackmail, even the whisper about conservatorship. You did well, she said, smiling at me. Well, use this in conjunction with the deed fraud and identity theft. It's more than enough. I nodded, but my chest still felt hollow. What if they walk? What if some lawyer spins it? Rachel, who had come straight from her office, leaned. On the edge of the desk, they won't. Addison has priors, even if dismissed. Michael's pattern is clear. With the civil suit and the DA's charges, they'll be buried. I wanted to believe her. I needed to. But even as I sat there, the adrenaline fading, a darker thought slithered in Michael, was still my son. And sons don't just disappear, even when they're monsters. The trial took months, courtrooms at 2:20. West Broadway became my second home. I learned the rhythm of hearings, the clack of the judges, gavel the icy politeness of defense attorneys, spinning lies like silk. Addison tried to slither free, pinning everything on Michael. But the recordings and documents nailed her, too, the day the jury foreman read guilty on charges of identity theft, deed fraud, and conspiracy. I felt something inside me unclench. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. Addison stared at me like she wanted to burn a hole through my chest. Sentencing came weeks later. Addison got 5 years. Michael got 3, reduced for cooperation. Though what cooperation meant I never knew. When they led him out in handcuffs, he finally looked at me, not with hatred, not with remorse, just emptiness. And that emptiness hurt more than anything else. I kept my condo. The judge signed the quiet title, voiding the fraudulent deed. My credit was scarred but salvageable. I replaced the locks again, installed better cameras, and every night I double-checked the chain before bed. But victory didn't feel like joy. It felt like survival. People ask me sometimes if I'll ever forgive Michael. I tell them forgiveness is for debts you can repay. He tried to take my name, my home, my life, that can't be repaid. What I learned at 60 is this: sometimes the greatest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who know exactly where to cut deepest. And sometimes the only way to survive family is to bury them in truth. Because even now, when I close my eyes, I hear Addison's voice in that park conservatorship, very popular in California. And I know he'll never let anyone own me again. The end.